Welcome to the Quotive Corner. However this moment finds you, mapping out your morning, pushing through the middle of your day, or reflecting quietly at night. Thanks for joining me. Let's take a few minutes to consider a quote that sounds almost paradoxical, but might explain why some people actually get things done. To achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. That line comes from Leonard Bernstein, composer, conductor, educator, and one of the most dynamic musical figures of the 20th century. Bernstein wasn't just talented, he was prolific. He conducted the New York Philharmonic, composed West Side Story, delivered legendary televised lectures on music, and constantly worked at a pace that seemed almost unsustainable. Which makes this quote feel less theoretical and more autobiographical. A plan, and not quite enough time. We usually assume great achievement requires two things: preparation and plenty of time. Enough runway, enough margin, enough space to perfect every detail. Bernstein suggests something different. The plan is essential, but the shortage of time is equally important. Why? Because time pressure clarifies. A plan without urgency often dissolves into procrastination. Ideas linger in notebooks. Projects stall in early drafts. Vision remains theoretical. But introduce constraint. Introduce the sense that the clock is moving. And suddenly, priorities sharpen. You cut the unnecessary. You focus. You act. We've talked before about the danger of shortcuts. This is not that. Bernstein isn't advocating sloppiness. He's advocating tension, the productive kind. Too much time can create comfort. Comfort can delay momentum. But not quite enough time? That creates intensity. Think about some of the most creative periods in history: wartime innovation, deadline-driven art, startups racing against limited funding, students finishing a thesis before the submission window closes. Constraint doesn't automatically produce excellence, but it often produces clarity, and clarity accelerates progress. Now let's look at the first part again, the plan. Urgency without direction creates chaos. Pressure without structure leads to burnout. The plan is what channels urgency into productivity. It defines what matters. It establishes priorities. It outlines the steps. But the absence of pressure often tempts revision without execution. You tweak instead of ship. You refine instead of release. You prepare indefinitely instead of perform. Bernstein, as a conductor, understood timing intimately. Music itself is structured time. Notes mean nothing without rhythm, and rhythm is measured against movement. A symphony cannot linger forever in rehearsal. At some point, it must be performed. And performance requires a moment. There's something psychologically interesting here as well. Human beings are remarkably adaptive under constraints. Parkinson's law suggests that work expands to fill the time allotted. If you give yourself unlimited time, tasks expand accordingly. But if you limit time thoughtfully, focus increases. That's the balance Bernstein captures. A plan prevents recklessness. Limited time prevents complacency. Too much time can produce perfectionism, and perfectionism often masquerades as productivity. You convince yourself you're improving the work when in reality you're avoiding completion. But not quite enough time forces decision-making, and decision-making moves things forward. This applies beyond creative work. In leadership, too much time to decide can erode confidence. But thoughtful urgency can build momentum. In personal growth, waiting for the perfect moment to change a habit often means never starting. But introducing a deadline, even an artificial one, can catalyze action. And here's the key phrase in the quote: not quite enough time. Not no time, not reckless urgency, just enough pressure to prevent drift. That balance requires self-awareness, because some personalities thrive under pressure, others collapse. The goal isn't to panic, it's to engage. And here's something else worth noticing. The plan comes first. Urgency without a plan leads to noise. The plan anchors the urgency. That's maturity. Because greatness rarely emerges from improvisation alone. It emerges from preparation meeting constraint. Bernstein's career was filled with deadlines, concert schedules, broadcast commitments, composition commissions. He didn't wait for infinite time. He worked within structure. And that's encouraging. It means you don't need perfect conditions to begin something meaningful. In fact, waiting for perfect conditions might be the very thing preventing you from starting. So here's something practical to consider. Is there something you've been planning but not executing? If so, what would not quite enough time look like? A deadline? A public commitment? A fixed launch date? A measurable milestone? Sometimes the missing ingredient isn't more time. It's slightly less. Enough to sharpen you. Enough to push you. Enough to move you from idea to action. Because plans without urgency drift. And urgency without plans burns out. But together, they create movement. Thanks for spending time here at the Quotive Corner. If this reflection nudged you toward action instead of delay, consider sharing it with someone who values thoughtful execution. And remember, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. I hope you join me in the next episode.